How to record an album that lives up to your artistic vision. This video is intended as a warm-up before each mixing session. This warm-up was carefully created by Stonebridge Mastering, a member of the Audio Engineering Society and the Grammy Recording Academy. We want to help our clients create a bridge over the disappointment of shady studios, wasted time, wasted money, and lost chances. On the other side of the bridge, we will take special care in polishing and putting the finish on your refined work of art. Combining artist development and mastering is a dream we have pursued for over a decade. Professional mastering requires specialized equipment and acoustic treatment, as well as the influence of an experienced mastering engineer. No mixing studio can do professional mastering, although many try to upsell it and will advertise that they can. It must be considered that the quality of an album's mastering is known to make or break record sales, even since the 1960s. We could do an entire video about why professional mastering is necessary, but a bit of looking around on Google is very convincing. When recording at a studio, our recommendations can be downloaded and printed from our website and given to your engineer. This can help ensure refined quality throughout the entire recording process. Let's talk about a few concepts that can help prevent the common pitfalls. There are 7 main concepts. Number 1, good final mixes don't have any digital clipping. This means that all peaks are kept below -3 decibels. Number 2, good final mixes are created using tasteful EQ techniques. Number 3, good final mixes have the bass frequencies cut from the tracks that are not bass instruments. Number 4, good final mixes are a little punchier and more dynamic than you expect the final master to be. Number 5, good final mixes usually sound different from commercially released albums, which is mostly due to dynamics. Number 6, good final mixes should avoid adding excessive high frequency. Number 7, good final mixes are overall well balanced. Part 1, avoiding clipping. Have you had problems with a harsh sound quality, a sense of low fidelity, muddiness, or boxiness? Digital clipping could be part of the problem. To avoid clipping, most people rely on meters to show when the signal goes into the red. The problem is that meters lie, including digital meters. To carefully avoid clipping, all peaks should be kept below -3 decibels. This will avoid actual clipping and not just clipping lights. Some engineers think that to get a good sound, the recording level must be as high as possible. But that idea is not true in 24-bit digital recording. It's always important to drive your preamps to their sweet spots, but at 24-bit, the input levels going into the computer don't matter much. It's important to make sure clipping does not occur on individual track meters, master output meters, and between plugins. Sometimes a track will peak at -3 decibels, but it isn't loud enough in the mix. It usually is best and most thorough to reduce the level of every other track to match it. Another option is to use a compressor or limiter to lower the peaks. Then, the volume of the track can be raised in the mix without the peaks going over -3 decibels. Finally, clipping should be avoided everywhere in the signal chain. That means checking all track meters, the master meter, and all effect meters to make sure they all peak below -3 decibels. This takes time, but after all, that's why most home studio and project studios are created, so that the owners can spend the needed time without paying hourly for it. Part 2. Subtractive EQ. EQ is a widely misused tool. An informed approach to EQ is the real essence of mixing. To illustrate this, let's think of this blank screen as the entire mix before anything has been recorded. This is silence. When we add a picture of this guitar with nothing cut out of it, and a picture of this bass with nothing cut out of it, and these drums and this vocalist, then we can see what many people's mixes would look like. The transparency of the pictures can be adjusted, which is like adjusting track volumes, but it still looks and sounds jumbled. People who mix this way wonder why their mixes rarely come out sounding the way that they want. Instead, the frequencies that aren't important to the mix should be cut, and as you can see, the mix becomes more clear. The individual tracks won't sound as good when soloed, but we're working on a good mix, not good individual tracks. In almost all cases, bass frequencies should be cut out of all instruments that are not bass instruments. This cut might be around 175 Hz and below. This is sometimes called a bass roll-off or a high pass. Bass frequencies are most harshly affected by the overlapping of frequencies. High frequencies can be cut on some tracks because not every instrument can have high-frequency sparkle without taking away from another instrument's sparkle. EQs are often dipped in the middle. You can dip by boosting the EQ very high and with a narrow Q. Then you find the most displeasing frequency, adjust the Q to be surgical, and finally dip the EQ to reduce that frequency. The Q is the slope of the EQ curve. Finally, panning as well as tasteful reverb and delay techniques can be used to go even further with reducing overlap. Also, just to get it said here, bass instruments such as bass drums and bass lines are usually left in the center and not panned. Okay, let's review. First, all instruments that are not bass instruments need to have the bass frequencies cut out of them. Next, tasteful judgment should be used to figure out which unnecessary frequencies can be cut without sacrificing an instrument's sound in the mix. Finally, panning can be used to separate instruments from each other that occupy the same frequency range. Of course, these rules are not set in stone, but instead they are concepts to keep in mind that can lead to good choices. Part 3. Punchy Dynamic Recordings. Avoiding overlapping frequencies and avoiding clipping and not just clipping lights will lead to more control over the punch. Punch usually comes from the bass drum and sometimes the bass guitar. Of course, this can be different in the infinite possibilities of music, so it's your call on exactly where the punch comes from. Wherever it comes from, it's best to err on the side of a little more punch or dynamic than you would expect to hear on the final master. This can get a little difficult since this must be done while still keeping the overall master output peaks below -3 decibels, the individual track peaks below -3 decibels, and each plugin's peaks below -3 decibels as we've talked about, but it's part of the work that makes great recordings.